Hey everyone, and welcome to Screams After Midnight. I am Pierre, and joining me on this horror voyage is Tim.
I thought you were gonna say horror show, which kind of sounds like it could go two ways.
I mean, yeah. I mean, it could be a horror show because it's horrifically bad. Isn't that the joke we always crack when we watch a really bad movie? Well, it was horrific in this sense.
That's what you always crack because you're a hack, and I don't repeat jokes.
I'm sorry. Every time you mention that you like the boy is a repeated joke because I can't take it as anything else but that. Thank you very much. Yeah, we talk about horror movies on this show. It's a horror movie podcast. The main event, of course, this episode is going to be Annabelle Comes Home, the third Annabelle movie, and the seventh Conjuring universe movie overall, I believe, if my quick math checks out in my head. I forgot about Curse of La Llorona. I forgot that counted.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
7.
That's the eighth. No, because two Conjurings, two Annabelles is 4. The Nun's 5, La Llorona 6. Yeah, that's everything, right?
Yeah, and then so Annabelle Comes Home would be 7th.
Yeah. And then presumably Conjuring 3, if that's next, would be.
Yes.
Would be number 8. Yeah, I know, tons of them. It's the thing, is half the content we put out seems to be either a Blumhouse or the Conjuring universe. That seems to be the way things go. So that'll be the main thing.
I think WB is just happy they finally got a cohesive cinematic universe.
I don't know if I'd go that far. More cohesive than the attempt at DC, perhaps. I don't know if I'd go as far to call everything outside of the two Conjuring movies cohesive. Not talking about this one yet. We'll talk about Annabelle Comes Home and my feelings on that later. I'm keeping that close to the chest, but I think my opinions on the previous spin-offs are well documented at this point. Yes. So obviously, yeah, we have reviewed all these previous movies. You can go check those out on the franchise playlist on YouTube, or just search the audio feed, whatever you do. As always, we'll start spoiler free. We'll give you a warning before we get into spoilers somewhere in the middle. We are talking about Annabelle Comes Home. And just to give you a bit of a, reiterate our feelings on the matter. Annabelle 1 sucked balls. It was terrible. Annabelle Creation was better, but still wasn't great, and the ending was really annoying because it had to tie into the first one, and so.
Well, we disagreed about that. I liked it more than you, and I didn't mind the ending. So.
The official stance of this show is that it wasn't that good. Thank you very much. I will not have this. I'm actually just clicking to see what the director's. This is his first directorial job. Interesting.
Well, this is Gary Dauberman, who, yes, first directing job, but we are very familiar with his work.
Oh yeah, I'm looking at his writing credits. Yes.
He basically somehow is, for whatever reason, the only person in Hollywood that's allowed to write horror movies. He's like pretty much doing every big major horror movie.
Yeah, mostly bad ones, to be honest.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's got the Annabelle, the Nun. It was a bit better, but not,
Well, this is why I'm very interested with It Chapter 2, because yes, he is the credited writer for the It Chapter 1, but I'm also wondering how much of the script he was working off of the True Detective person that was kind of writing it before. So It Chapter 2 will be his first solo thing, so I'm interested to see that. And then he's a writer for Salem, the upcoming Salem's Lot. And
does that have a different title?
No, it should just be Salem's Lot, but I mean I don't even know how much in pre-production it is. They just announced that he's writing it.
It's not an IMDb, but maybe it's just too soon for it to be there. Because he's working on Are You Afraid of the Dark? He's also apparently the creator and possibly showrunner of Swamp Thing, which has not been that good. So,
oof. I haven't seen it yet. But,
yeah, not a great track record as of yet. And obviously, just in terms of other Conjuring spin-offs, The Nun was absolute garbage. Can't get behind that at all. And I've not seen Curse of La Llorona yet, but don't worry, we're going to get to that. It's not going to be too long, actually. It's on the schedule. Conjuring 1 and 2, though, pretty solid movies. So, this takes us to Annabelle Comes Home, which is the first one that's not a prequel of a prequel of a prequel. This is actually set after the Warrens get the doll. Although I guess technically it means it's set before the first Conjuring.
Well, the first Conjuring like starts with the little Annabelle, whatever you want to call that kind of opening segment or whatever.
Yeah, so at least them getting the doll. I mean, there's a year time jump in this, so it's possible that or hell, I mean, the plot of this movie has them leaving home for a while. I mean, it's entirely possible that their trip in this movie is actually the first Conjuring movie.
Yeah, I was wondering if that was supposed to be alluding to, like either one of the movies or
because there is
at least a famous case or something.
Because there's an item at the end which implies the first movie has happened by the end of the movie, whether or not it happened in the year time jump or it happened literally on this trip where they were away. Who's to say? Probably the trip. That was probably the idea. So this is the only Annabelle as well that actually has the Warrens in it properly, as in that they actually have the actors in Vera Farmiga and what's his face, Patrick Wilson. They actually have them in playing the parts. They're there early on in the movie, and it's kind of treated as like Home Alone almost, where the parents go away. And you have the young daughter played by McKenna Grace, who was in The Hunt in the Hill House. She was also played a young version of Sabrina on that Netflix show, and she was also a young Tonya Harding in I, Tonya. So she's been sprinkling herself around, getting a lot of work.
I also think I heard something. I think it was her that she's like producing a movie or something, and she's supposed to be like the youngest producer in Hollywood.
I mean, it upsets me that someone who's, I mean, what age is she here? She's 13 this year, and she is far more successful than either of us. That's just great.
But like, I mean, I don't know. If that's true, though, it sounds like a little gimmicky, because it's like really like how effective of a producer are you going to be at 13 years old? I mean, unless
she was also young Carol Danvers in Captain Marvel.
Hey.
Yeah.
So
like that. And
whenever you need a young woman, she's a young version or something.
She's going to be in the Ghostbusters movie next year, so that's the thing that's happening.
Oh, young Slimer, cool.
Oh dear. There's a few actresses that are like that. The girl you mentioned it, the one who's the young Beverly. She's the young Jessica Chastain in it, essentially, because Chastain's playing her. She was the young Amy Adams in the HBO show Sharp Objects. She was in all the flashbacks. So if you need a redhead, like if you've got a redhead actress and you the young version, that's the actress they're calling in to do the young plot.
To be fair, they are pretty good actresses, so like which you don't always find with kids. So I guess maybe if it's like, this kid's good, put him in everything. Like
no, I mean I'm not complaining. It's just all of a sudden there's a couple of young actresses who seem to be everywhere. But like you say, she's pretty good. So obviously the Annabelle gets out of her magical glass box and chaos ensues. We'll save the rest of the plot for spoilers. But you've got the basic setup being young what was her name? Judy. It was Judy.
Sorry.
Young Judy with her babysitter, Mary Ellen, and her babysitter's friend, Daniela, in the house, and all hell breaks loose, basically. So
I think it's like you said, it's kind of like Home Alone, also like a little bit like Night at the Museum, just like these like more horrific versions.
Yeah. So with that, I asked the question, Tim, did you enjoy Annabelle Comes Home?
It's kind of weird. I think this movie's okay. I would say I like it. I definitely don't love it. And the reason why I say it's kind of weird is because I feel like it's very technically proficient, but there's nothing about it that really stands out. But like when I'm watching it, it kind of feels like someone had a book that was like, how to make a James Wan horror movie, and they were just like, as they're making the movie, they just have like a checklist of like, oh, do that, do that, do that. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't feel very like genuine, but at the same time, it's not really doing anything like bad, I would say. So it's kind of strange. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying. I I think it's decent. It's okay. You know, like
Yeah.
I feel like that this is for me easily the best of the Annabelle movies. In fact, it's easily the best Conjuring spin-off movie because the rest of them pretty much suck. And it's not. I wouldn't even go as far as say it's good. I'd say it's got some fun ideas that I wish it kind of did more with. It sets up this idea that like because I'd argue this movie, and I don't think this is a spoiler to say this. This movie is less an Annabelle movie and more about everything in the Warrens like vault room movie. Like that's essentially what it is. And as an idea goes, that's actually pretty solid. And the idea that there could be lots of things happening over the course of this day, and I love that it's all set in one night. I think the actresses are all pretty good. The characters, and this is where I really think it holds up versus the other Annabelle movies, especially the first one, is that I found them all to be at least somewhat likable. You know, young Judy with Mary Ellen, it reminded me in some ways of Danielle Harris and her big sister in Halloween 4. Yeah. You know, I was getting kind of that relationship from them. And she's trying to be nice to her, and because mainly maybe it's probably just because not only just because of the dynamics of that relationship, but also because in Halloween 4, Jamie gets a lot of shit because she happens to be related to Michael Myers, and it's kind of the same in this. Where one of the big plot points for her character is that everyone knows who her parents are because of the newspapers, and she's getting kind of mistreated because of that. So it gave me some of those vibes, and I was kind of into that. I don't think it goes as far as it should with because like this was always going to be more of a fun movie than it was a serious like dead on horror movie. But I actually think it's still a little bit too toothless. Like I thought it was like too easily like dealt with towards the end.
Oh no, without a doubt. I think the ending is very abrupt. I think it doesn't feel as dangerous as you want in a horror movie.
Yeah.
Like I don't think I ever really felt like I think maybe early on in the beginning I was maybe a little fearful for some characters, but after a while it just kind of felt like like you just know like nothing too bad is gonna happen really. And then there is like this kind of weird like after school like special kind of sitcom like warmness in it where you know what I mean, like where there's just kind of like these scenes of like the characters just really being like like it like almost feels like there's like they have to have like a special moment, like if it was a sitcom there would be the audience going like at like certain points.
Yeah. I get what you're saying. I don't actually mind it being lighter. Actually, like I'm okay. Like, if that's what the direction of Annabelle movies are going to be, that we have this lighter, kind of just like not family friendly, but like just a more fun, toothless like time. I'd be okay with that. I think for me the problem is that it didn't go far enough then in that direction where like just keep going for it then. Go absolutely nuts and have your full on Home Alone like girl and two teenagers like try and fight off an army of ghosts and demons by themselves. But the problem is that all of the other movies though have set up these things as so dangerous and severe that it feels really weird just how under just how less dangerous it feels in this movie, I guess. I was looking for a good phrase that I could think of.
You know what's crazy is I actually just looked it up, but this movie was R, which is like insane to me. Is there anything about it that you think should be R rated? Especially like in this time when like so many studios are like making PG-13 horror movies. I
feel like there was an F-bomb, although you can have an F-bomb in you can have one F-bomb in a PG-13.
Get one.
There may have been a couple. There is one scene I can think of that would push it into our rating. I can't say it though, tell spoilers, but but there is one I can kind of think of that maybe would push it in there. I mean, this could have been PG-13 without many changes though. there's definitely not a lot.
Yeah.
Which again is fine if you want to give me, give me essentially the babysitter, but with like ghosts and demons instead of like assholes. Then sure,
Yeah.
we could do that. And I liked kind of the setup for it. I actually got quite excited. Probably about end of Act 1, getting into Act 2. I was like, oh, I think I can see what this movie could be. I'm kind of into it. And then it was fine. Like, it wasn't bad for the rest of the movie. I think probably the biggest thing for me is that end of Act 2 or early Act 3, it's established by the characters that they have to do something to survive, right? They have to accomplish something to end the horror as it is. And I'm avoiding what it is just for spoiler's sake.
Yeah.
And it's fine. Like, I don't even mind how simple it is. It's actually a really simple, easy thing. I just hate how they have they realize they have to do this thing to stop everything, and there's one scene of them struggling to achieve it, and then they do it, and that's it. There's no like, it felt like once you've set up the way you solve this is the X thing, then you should make the whole movie from that point on be about getting through all the obstacles to achieve that X thing.
It felt like, they were having too much fun with the movie, and then all of a sudden they remembered, oh yeah, we got to end it. So all right, here, end. And it's just like very
kinda
abrupt.
And again, I actually have no problem with what the solution is. I actually like the idea of it being that simple. But I feel like it should be more difficult for them to achieve it. They should have to like go through more hurdles to get to it.
Yeah.
Because when they actually achieved it, I was like, oh wait, is that it? Oh, okay, we're done. All right, movie's ready to be over. Outside of a couple of epilogue scenes.
Yeah, and there's a few things that just kind of feel like a little underwhelming. I would say there's one like specific, let's say, creature or entity or whatever that's kind of taking place outside the house that just felt like should have been cooler and more interesting, and really didn't end up being that.
Yeah, when they introduced that, I got excited again. That was like one of the moments where like, oh, I kind of like what this movie's doing. But they never really did a whole lot with it. It's just kind of there.
I kind of feel like that's something you get with like all these, like pretty much all like the kind of Conjuring movies. Well, maybe not so much the Nun, but I feel like there's so much setup in the beginning. Like whenever something lingers on an object or item too long, like, all right, that's gonna come back, and then some like a lot of stuff you get excited for, and then some ends up being kind of cool, and then some just gonna end up being a little underwhelming.
Yeah.
I think there was one really cool thing here that they I was actually a little excited with and hoping they were going to do more with, but they don't. And
I wonder
it's hard to talk about.
Yeah, I wonder if it's the same thing that I think is the best thing in the movie. There's one particular item or set piece that I think is the most interesting from a horror scene point of view, but also from a conceptual point of view. So I'm curious if it's the same thing.
And if it is the same thing, it kind of annoyed me because it sets up like very easily like what it's doing, and then there's a thing that it shows that then it kind of like negates on. It's so hard to say without spoiling, but we'll get to it.
Yeah, we'll get to it.
And then there's like also like some weird stuff that's just like, why is this here? Like some stuff is really cool, and then some stuff it's kind of like, all right, this is a little much. But yeah, it's I mean, it's kind of hard to say. Like we both kind of said it. Like it's just fine. It's just one of those things. Like there's nothing really bad about it, but there's nothing that essentially puts it over the top to make you say like, oh, this is really cool. Like I had fun while I watched it. Don't know if I'll ever really need to see it again, or if I do, it probably won't be for a long time.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just one of those very kind of like, I guess, in the middle kind of things.
I think what I'll do is I'll give it some more credit though, because I feel like the thing that kind of sets it apart from other like really middle of the road movies to a point is that I do think the characters are somewhat likable. Not that they're my favorite characters ever, but like none of them annoyed me. They all like they felt genuine enough.
I think like the one complaint I have is like the best friend does definitely do like the stereotypical like horror movie thing where you're like, come on, what are you doing? But that's a minor gripe. I think other than that though, like they are all very likable, and they're people that you don't mind spending time with on screen. So there definitely is that.
Yeah, the best friend does do a couple of things that kind of get the plot going, and they are kind of silly. But at the same time, like once her motivation was kind of set up, I was like, okay.
Yeah, at least they do give a reasoning for it.
But it did make a nice scene. I'll talk about it in spoilers, but there's a nice scene early on where I realised what it might be setting up with her, and I was like, oh, this is kind of interesting. I will say the only character that made me baffled, the pizza delivery guy.
Yeah.
I have no idea what movie he walked out of before he came out of this one, but he felt like he was in a different script that somehow accidentally got shuffled into this, and no one noticed. They just had the actor show up and do all these stupid lines. It's only one scene. There's one scene where a pizza delivery guy shows up.
It's like trying too hard to be funny.
Yes.
It's not like the lines are necessarily that bad. Like I could see him working in like a comedy or whatever, but yeah, like you said, it's just very out of place. And I mean, maybe it's a different time back then, but it's like, so he's saying some weird stuff. Although I guess to be fair, I have had some really weird pizza people.
Yeah,
I forget, I might have mentioned this on the podcast before, but I was actually having a party at my house once, and like the pizza guy basically like invited himself in. Like he was like, "Hey, party, all right." Like he just kind of came in and like started hanging out with us, and we're like, okay, cool."
I think you're lucky you're not like chopped up into little pieces in a ditch somewhere, Tim.
True.
And not just because of this pizza party story. I feel like there's several stories you've told me where I'm like, that could have very easily ended in your murder. Very easily.
I mean, to be fair though, like a big party, it's like, someone's probably not going to try to do something to you with, well, I mean, I guess maybe that's not necessarily true, but maybe I felt a little safer having so many people around. If it was, if I was by myself and he's trying to come in, I'd be like, what are you doing?
Here's a real question though. Doesn't he have like to go back to work? Like, hasn't he got more pieces to deliver?
I mean, it was super late at night, so like it was probably like 12, 1-ish or something. So maybe it was his last delivery, and he was like, "Hey, I want to hang out with these kids or something." But I don't know.
Hilarious, good stuff. Yeah, so pizza delivery guy, I don't know what was going on with that. Which was funny actually, because they were doing a scare here, and it turned out not to be him at first, but they were doing this scare where it was like someone was banging on the door, and Mary Ellen, which is a really weird double-barreled name for the record. Mary Ellen's like scared, and she's walking closely to the door, and I'm like, you ordered pizza. There was a scene of you ordering pizza like 5 minutes ago. This is Chloe the pizza guy, and it actually wasn't technically at first, but. I was like, why are you scared? You know pizza's on its way.
Yeah.
Oh dear. Anyway, I suppose we'll give the spoiler warning and we'll dive into the spoilers for the movie. So first things first, we'll probably go through it more or less in order, but I do want to bring up my favorite thing first, because I think it's the same thing Tim was talking about. Are we talking about the weird TV that's in the room? Yes. That was by far my favorite scene in the whole movie. It felt so surreal. Even the music that accompanied it felt kind of weird. It felt like we'd slipped into like a weird sci-fi horror where this was like a weird piece of technology as opposed to a cursed item,
It was really cool, and it was like it was a little more subtle because they weren't really like banging you over the head with what it was doing. Like it took a second before you realized like, oh, okay, this TV is basically showing her what's going to happen like 10 seconds into the future.
Yeah. Well, what was funny though is that, because she sees herself as if it's a camera, right? And there's no visible camera. So especially in the 70s. I mean, these days, we're like, okay, there's a camera on the laptop above the screen or whatever. But this is the 70s, right? So and it's got that slightly more round look to it. So it looks very kind of oddly retro future. But she sees herself on the camera and it's, it's kind of shitty quality. It's kind of sort of bluey and fuzzy. And it was funny though, at first I thought it was actually playing behind, because, whenever she turned her head and looked back, I thought it was like playing like behind, so that when, because I thought what it was going to do is that something scary would happen, but she wouldn't see the thing move behind her until she looks back at the screen, kind of thing.
Oh yeah. I kind of had a thought like that at first too.
But then it proves with one of the items falling off the shelf that it's actually the opposite. It's showing things that are about to happen. Exhibit 10 seconds. And the scene that happens later, because we go away from, because she's locked in the room, which, by the way, the idea that we spend like a subplot in this movie with a character locked in that room with all those items, yeah, that's a good idea. Like that room's scary as shit because of all these items. But when we come back, she's not looking at the TV, and we see her like answer like this antique phone on the wall on the TV, and she answers the phone, and then it sort of flickers a little bit, and then we see her there like covered in blood and like sort of screaming or crying, and you see it for a few seconds, and she never gets to see it, and then you hear the phone ring, and she like comes around the corner to answer the phone, and I was like, this is a really effective little scene. And by the way, this is the scene that I think would have gotten our rating for the. I was thinking the dread of her being like drenched in blood.
Sure.
I feel like was at least borderline.
There's not really. Yeah, I guess so, because there isn't really much else like in terms of like gore or blood really in the movie I can think of.
Well, no one actually gets killed or dies like that.
Yeah, I think she was the one I was like most scared for. But I think after seeing that she survives this television thing, at this point I was kind of like, okay, so I just don't think anyone's gonna die in this movie then.
Yeah,
and that's when everything kind of felt like a lot more safe and less creepy and.
Yeah, because you felt like she existed to A, set everything up, and then B, be the one who snuffs it, right? The one who goes down, and she does it. And I'm glad she didn't. She was a nice enough character. She was likable, but
yeah, I did like her, yeah. But then it makes me question though, like with this TV then, because I thought that from the little bit we get at first, I assumed that this is the definite future, but then I guess not, because she obviously survives.
Yeah, because this is the point where the others run in the room and like, Judy's like, don't answer it, kind of thing. So I mean,
it's one of those weird things where I kind of want to know more about this thing, but then also that might take away like the kind of coolness of it, because I want to know, like, all right, is it showing the future? Is it showing like possible different timelines? Like, can it make stuff happen, or is it pretty much just stuck with telling you like what is going to happen or whatever? But then it might be one of those things where like the more you learn, the less there is to it.
Is the phone ring connected to it? Like it has to have you answer the phone to do its thing, or was the phone just a completely separate entity that was going to kill her, and the TV was just showing that it was going to kill her, and therefore, since it got interrupted, like does it only predict the future based on the information it has? So the idea that someone else might run in,
maybe
I don't know. Like it's hard to get. I mean, out of all the things in that room, this is the one that I could take a movie about this TV screen. Like I could take some scientist in the 50s tinkering with this old school TV screen and seeing things he's not supposed to see. Like I could totally been in that movie. Yeah, so the movie starts with the Warrens taking the Annabelle doll.
Basically get like a little bit of an extended version of that first opening scene in the first Conjuring movie. Yeah,
you don't get the whole thing, you get like the tail end of it, but you then get the like them like actually driving back to the house with it,
You know what's so funny? Like sometimes I go to the IMDb trivia to see like let me see if there's any interesting little tidbits that might be good for the podcast. And like I was looking at it after I watched the movie, and sometimes the trivia is just like so lame. Like one of the things they said was like the opening scene with Annabelle is a reference to the first Conjuring movie. It's like, yeah, no shit. Like,
thank you.
Obviously.
Thank you for that, IMDb.
There's like so many like dumb stuff like that. Like Ed and Lorraine are characters from the Conjuring universe movies. It's like, yes, all right. This isn't trivia. This is like obvious like information.
Isn't that stuff user submitted as well? Like who thought this was something
I think so.
that needs submitted? Like I've got a good bit of trivia.
Yeah.
For the IMDb page, I'm going to submit this bad boy.
Shouldn't make fun of probably a listener.
Did you know this movie is a horror film?
No, they all right. So they have the doll and they're driving home, and they kind of are experiencing all this like trouble with the car, and they stop right in front of the cemetery, and this was driving me crazy. So I believe it was called the Maryville Cemetery. and it felt so specific that I kept thinking like, all right, this has to be connected either to something that happened in the other movie or to some type of urban legend or folklore, because just Maryville Cemetery sounds so familiar to me. But I tried looking it up and I couldn't find any reference to what that could mean. So I don't know if any listeners or anything have any like tips on that. I'd love to hear it, but
I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little disappointed. I thought when you started that story that you kept digging and you found something, and it was like you're going to give me a bit of trivia, not about the movie necessarily, but just like why you know that name and why it means something to you.
Like because I like to read like a lot about like urban legends and stuff, so it was kind of like popping off like little stuff in my brain, and I was like, oh, is that like the cemetery where you have like that Heartland Sally ghost, if you ever heard that tale or something? Or also there's it sounded familiar with I think there's like some, where I'm from in Rhode Island, I remember there was a like legend about a vampire in a cemetery. I think it was in northern Rhode Island, I believe. And I was like, oh, is that the cemetery? Because it sounds familiar. But yeah, I mean, I did very, I didn't like dig super deep, but I tried a couple of internet searches and couldn't really find anything.
But yeah, so this is after they actually stop at the cemetery after they come across a car accident that's happened.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And Lorraine like consents the ghost, and she speaks to the ghost in the car because the car breaks down, and Ed goes out to tinker with the engine. So basically, this is when they realize that other spirits are attracted to Annabelle. That it kind of brings them in close to it, and Ed almost dies because the ghost pushes him out of the road, and a truck almost hits him.
Yeah,
but it doesn't, and obviously it couldn't because he's in Conjuring 2, for example. But they come back and they've got a priest there, and they bless the doll, and like this won't do. We have to actually case it in something. And they set up the idea that Lorraine knows that when they finally make that box and they shut the door, that no, it is that okay. The evil's been contained. She can't feel it anymore. It's worked.
I think they even mentioned that like the glass case was from like an old church or something.
Yeah, it was like I don't know if they blessed the glass, but it was it was.
It was like, oh, St. Thomas Cathedral or something.
Yeah.
It's not some shit like that.
Yeah, so, no, really, neat enough. And we see like the daughter a little bit Judy as they come home, kind of spy them. And we cut a year later, and they're getting ready to go away. They've got Mary Ellen coming to be the babysitter and stay over with her for a couple of days. And it's just, I mean, it's nice to see the Warrens in this. It makes it feel more connected and relevant than any of the other spin-offs that have been, so disconnected that, outside of the titular ghost or whatever that's they're based on, like that's it.
With the other movies, it always feels like the connection is kind of an afterthought. Like it feels like they have this whole movie and then they're like, all right, so where are we gonna put in the little thing that ties it up? With this, it actually feels like from the beginning that they knew what they were doing. It kind of feels like almost like similar to the way like Civil War kind of felt like less of a Captain America movie and more of like an Avengers movie. Like in a way, this almost feels like more of a Conjuring movie than like an Annabelle movie.
Kind of. I mean,
like feels like, I don't know, like almost like Conjuring 2.5 or something.
I would say it still feels like a spin-off, but I say that in the sense that the other spin-offs don't really feel like spin-offs. They feel like tacked on things that happen to be closely connected. And my distinguishing there is that, because to me, what a Conjuring movie is the Warrens being the protagonist and fighting whatever the spirit or ghost or demon is. And they're here, but they're not the ones actually fighting anything. Because I actually think the concept for this movie is really good. Like, just no, it's their daughter is left alone and something gets out of that room. There you go, boom, easy, easy money. So we get introduced to Mary Ellen, who's fairly likable, is good with the kid, and is going to make her a cake because her birthday's coming up soon. That's what they're going to do after school. We established that...
But she's such a loser. She uses an inhaler. Oh my god. Loser.
Sure, Tim. Sure. We established that she gets bullied at school because of who her parents are, because they've been in the paper. Are they hoaxers? Are they heroes? Kind of thing. which made me think of Halloween 4. And admittedly, at no point did anyone come up and go, Jamie's an orphan, Jamie's an orphan. Kids are so cruel in that movie.
Yeah.
But we established that. We established that Judy has her mother's ability, that she is passed on, that she can also see ghosts, that she feels things and senses things. And yeah, so ultimately her best friend Daniela wants to come over because she hears about, you didn't tell me
this is Mary Ellen's best friend.
Yes, Mary Ellen's best friend. Yes, Daniela. She's like, oh, you didn't tell me you babysat for the Warrens, and you didn't tell me what they did. They're these ghost hunters. And she's like, whatever. I'm going to come over. She's like, no, you shouldn't come over. I'm not supposed to have people over, but she does. And we establish also Bob, who's got a crush on Mary Ellen, and Mary Ellen's got a crush on him. He's kind of like a weird character to me, actually. He felt kind of useless for the most part in the movie. I wasn't sure exactly why he was there.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like that again. Like I thought that maybe they'd be setting up more stuff with him, and then he feels very like inconsequential.
Yeah,
like I guess there's kind of like one part where he's important for, but otherwise not that much really.
Yeah, he's kind of separate and never really does much with them. He just hides in the chicken coop.
Yeah.
That's basically all he does. So we establish all these characters to come over, and I think this chunk of the movie does a good job of making you like the characters for the most part. Them giving presents to Judy, her being kind of troubled by what's going on, but very down to earth, and coming in saying that she likes to snoop too when they're like when they catch Danielle looking through like the files of the cases and stuff. But of course, when they're outside, Daniela, finds the keys for the room, gets inside, and I thought this scene was quite effective in the sense where I was like, wait a minute, she keeps touching things. She's touching it, like, how many of these things is she awakening? And they do bring it up later, because when they find out she went in and, like, there's stuff going on, like, one of them says to her, like, how, what other things did you touch? And she just goes, everything.
Ooh, sorry.
Yeah, the haunted piano, the possessed samurai armor, the like
samurai armor's gotta go. Like, what the hell is that? That's like, I mean, I guess it's interesting to have like a lot of different stuff, but it just feels so weirdly out of place in this movie.
No, I dig it. I dig the samurai armor. That can stay.
I mean, unless they're gonna do like a movie where they show that the Warrens like went back in time to feudal Japan or something. Like, I don't think we really.
Oh
need
yeah,
it.
because nothing else they have in that room is like old and passed down through generations. Yeah, it's all new stuff. It's all contemporary 70s nonsense.
It's just so weird.
But so she she touched a bunch of things, and we find out it's because she lost her dad. Her dad was killed, and we find out it was kind of her fault. She was driving the car, they had a car accident, and she feels guilty, and she wants to speak to her dad, the spirit, looking for closure. And she thinks that just being in this room will unlock the supernatural barrier. It'll unlock the door to seeing him. But I don't know.
Yeah.
It's not super solid in terms of motivation, but I mean, okay, you gave her something. It wasn't just because before she brought up the dad and the photo, and she was like trying to talk to her dad. Before that, I was thinking, you're being such a selfish bitch right there. You're just curious, and you're going to unleash hell because of what you're doing. Because everything that happens in the movie is her fault. Like she does it all.
Without a doubt, yeah.
So yeah, once that happens, there's a bit more hanging out and stuff before like they kind of like, and the idiot boyfriend or possible boyfriend Bob comes over to sing some music, thinking it's romantic. Honestly, if someone showed up outside my window and just started playing music, especially when they don't seem to know each other that well yet. It's not like they're in a relationship and he's trying to like he's trying to apologize for something, or he's making some big gesture, like.
Yeah, well, it was like a little confusing, exactly like how well they know each other and stuff. And then Daniela does tell him like earlier, she's like, hey, like, she likes you, stupid. And then I think when he comes over, or I forget, does someone like tell him at some point like, oh yeah, like rock and roll, that's what you got to use to
How,
like
how
woo a woman.
how could you forget? That was the pizza guy,
That's
Tim.
the pizza guy. Yeah.
Which, by the way, he stands there and really takes the pizza guy's advice seriously.
Yeah.
Like
Which like
he listens to him. I don't know why. He sits there and listens to him, and then he's like, "Yeah, rock and roll. Yeah, you're right."
and then he does like a very like not really rock and roll thing. Like I guess like the best thing he could do is like get an acoustic guitar and sing this a very you know kind of not great version of whatever song it was he sang. But
Mm-hmm.
uh
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah.
So the thing that he's basically dealing with is because he's outside and then they come down to look for him and then he gets scared off by there's this werewolf which what it sounded interesting because earlier they're looking at these case files and I guess this one like I guess some of the cases are based on real cases from the Warrens and some they just make up for the movies and I heard this one was actually a real case but it had to do with someone was being possessed by a hellhound they said I believe in the UK and so it kind of sounds interesting but again, they don't really do much with it here, and it basically amounts to a lot of fog around the house, and this werewolf-looking thing comes out. It's pretty bad CGI.
Yeah, that was pretty rough.
But then, what I kept thinking was going to happen because they mentioned in the case file, it's like a guy that's possessed by a hellhound. So I kept thinking, okay, so this thing is going to possess him, and then this guy that they're normally friends with, that they like, that they're think is another ally is all of a sudden going to become an enemy and try to get into the house and chase them or something. But nothing like that ever actually happens. And
No,
it's very like
he just runs from it, hides in the chicken coop, saves Judy at one point when she's outside, and that's it. That's like all that happens with him. It really is.
And then and even when he saves Judy, though, at that point you think like, all right, well now he's going to join the group and become part of them, but he doesn't.
No. He just runs away again. It's very weird. I mean, before the girls do split up, there is like I think it's the second happens when they're putting her to bed. Before that, there is a moment when they're playing a game. They're playing a board game.
Oh yeah, Feely Mealy,
which is just a box with holes in it where you try and pick out the little toys that match the card you got. So you're basically just trying to feel for things. So it's one of those things. Is just sticking your hand in a dark hole. I did laugh a lot because obviously movies stretch what lighting would actually be. You don't necessarily make things realistic with lighting. You go for the look you want on screen. I do have to admit to you though that I did kind of feel a little bit, oh come on, when these holes in the side of this box were it was like perfect circles of darkness. As soon as they put their hand in, you couldn't see anything, and I'm like, bullshit. Yeah. Like you would see a fair bit of what's in there, in shadow. You would, and obviously it's creative license, but because this is just a cardboard box, it's not even that big. The fact that there's 4 holes on either side, I'm like, no, there'll be more light in there. I'm not buying this.
Yeah. I also thought this was one of the weakest objects, because when you see it kind of sounds like, oh, this could be really cool. Like, so much stuff could come out of it, and then it just really didn't do much for me. And basically all it amounts to is like at the end, like a hand or something comes out of it, and that's it.
Yeah, 4 hands, one outside each hole, which is fine. I don't know. It's one of those things that's a bit too flashy for me to think is actually creepy. It's like someone's someone thinks this is proper creepy, but it isn't really. But once they're split up though, basically Daniela realizes she still has the keys, so she has to sneak back in to try and put them back, and that's how she ends up stuck inside the room. We talked about her adventures in there. The others get attacked in different ways. Mary Ellen, I keep wanting to say Mary Louise because there's a character in Big Little Lies called that. Mary Ellen, she gets attacked by this bride, this wedding gown that possesses people. So she gets attacked by that ghost. Guy outside is getting attacked by the hellhound. Of course, Judy's the one who's actually getting Annabelle attacks. You've probably seen the trailer where it's under the sheets and the covers have been pulled down. Yeah.
So basically Annabelle seems to like want a new body, and as we know, Annabelle's not really a doll. It's like basically a conduit, I guess, for this demon. And it seems like the big thing is the Annabelle demon wants Judy to be like its new host, and So that's its motivation, and then the hero's motivation is basically they just need to get Annabelle back into this case, and once they do that, um, everything will go back to normal.
Yes, yes, that is the plan. There's also the ferryman who we've not mentioned, uh,
Oh yeah,
which
because
is
I would say like you said, Mary Ellen gets attacked by like that wedding dress lady, but then the wedding dress lady kind of ends up becoming Daniela's thing, and
yeah.
then Mary Ellen's, I guess, big adversary or whatever ends up being this ferryman, which I like the idea of the ferryman. I thought that sounded cool and creepy, but again, it just ends up being very like it just feels not dangerous because like all it seems to be is like, it drops coins and then you I guess you give the coins to him and you're okay. Like there's never really any point where it felt like the ferryman was actually coming after. It just seemed like it was watching her a lot.
It felt superfluous because ultimately that and the Hellhound and a couple of there's a scene where one of them has to walk past the Shogun armor that's standing in the hallway,
Yeah.
and it's a fine little scene. I did get a case of the moviness of the setup of these things actually. 'Cause even though I think it's cool that there's like the idea that a bunch of different stuff has been like awoken in the room, right?
Yeah.
The problem I had is that when they're in the records room and they're reading some of these cases, and it's like it's kind of a fun scene because Judy's like, yeah, I like snooping as well. I'm not supposed to, but I like reading about these things, and they're kind of bonding over it. But the three cases they talk about and read out loud are exactly three of the four that like happened to them.
Oh yeah.
For the rest of the movie.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. Like everything that gets like a little extra attention, like if the camera lingers on something for too long, you're kind of like, oh well, yeah, that's going to be one of the things they have to attend with, which in a way is kind of cool, but then also I don't know if it feels like too easy. I guess like if it's kind of because you don't really want the audience to notice these things, but I had trouble like not paying attention to stuff and being like, oh, well, this is obviously going to come back. All right, this is going to be a thing. All right, that's going to be a jump scare. Like even stuff with like this isn't even a cursed object, but like the light in Judy's room. It's like so because it's like the spinning circular light, and it's like so it stands out so much that you just know with these type of movies that's going to be like there's going to be some type of scare involved in it. And I don't know, part of me kind of likes the, I don't know, I guess almost like I guess the technique of it to see like, all right, I want to see how this is going to be utilized. But then another part of me also kind of feels like, it kind of takes you out of the movie a little bit.
I'm okay with knowing that something's going to be used, because that can be part of the fun of like, okay, how are they going to use this? Like, how inventive are they going to get with this item or this location or whatever? The problem is that this movie sets up a lot of things, and then all of the payoff is just a little bit underwhelming. Like, I don't think we even have that much to say about the actual scary portion, if you want to call it that. After they're all aware of something's going on and they form the plan. Ultimately, it's like, okay, Annabelle's behind that door. Oh, the door's now shut itself and locked. Where's the key?
Yeah.
Oh, it's in the board game, the feely mealy thing, right? Let's get the key.
Yeah.
If we can. And they get the key pretty quickly. She goes in the room. The ferryman corpses are there with the coins in their eyes, and she gets the doll and runs back out, and that's basically it. And they run to the room and put Annabelle in. And there's a little bit of a struggle. There's trying to hold the door shut and whatever, but there's not a whole lot that happens there. There's a scene where Danielle looks like she gets stabbed, but it's not really happened. Which again, kind of like what you were saying, where it takes the bite out of it. Where you're like, oh well, I guess no one's really in danger then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's a good way to put it. Is like like these things are all very interesting, and I think it is kind of telling that it's more exciting to talk about what the things are versus what they actually do. Because when you're talking about the actual cases and being like, oh man, this TV's really cool, and oh yeah, this samurai armor, this dress, this board game and stuff. But then when it comes to actually like, oh okay, those sound awesome, but what did they do in the movie? It's kind of like, nothing really.
Yeah. Maybe I say it too much. Maybe I say I'm just not focusing on the right things. It's frustrating. I don't want to be too harsh on it. I think it's actually fairly serviceable. It's just kind of unremarkable. It's very inoffensive in its quality.
Exactly.
Very inoffensive.
Yeah, no. like I don't want to be super negative because honestly, I did have a fun, good time at the movies. Like at no point was I ever like angry or anything about it, but it feels like maybe there was some like missed opportunities that were kind of keeping this away from being like a holy shit, like this was awesome, like I loved it, like it, there's just maybe a few things they could have done to just kind of put it up to that next level.
Could have been the surprise gem of the Conjuring
Yeah.
universe. It's still, I mean, it's still probably the
No,
best of the spin-offs for me, but like, obviously the bar's not that high, but it didn't upset me, it didn't piss me off.
for yeah, I mean, I still I like two quite a bit. Again, I know we differ on that, but for me, this is kind of pretty much on the same level. Like
mm,
I feel like I like them about the same. Which is to say, like I don't think either one is like amazing, but they are movies that I enjoyed.
okay.
Um, the one thing I was trying to think of is so at one point Daniela gets possessed by the bride dress,
Yes.
and basically the way she gets possessed is like the bride looms over her and like vomits into her mouth, which
Oh, I hated that scene. See,
we've seen it before, right?
yeah.
Like what wasn't that in another movie? I couldn't remember if it was another Conjuring movie
I
or
feel like it's been in like 100 movies. I am so sick of
yeah.
seeing ghosts vomit CG into a mouth. Like,
Yeah.
I'm so sick of it. I hate it.
It's very bad. Yeah, it feels like I've seen it a ton of times before. I want to say that is, I mean, maybe the reason why they did it is because it was in another Annabelle movie. Because I want to say in the second Annabelle, when the character gets possessed, that maybe that's how they did it.
Hmm.
Can't remember 100%, but yeah, it just feels like, come on, we've seen this so many times before. Like you said, it's not scary. Like there's nothing like it's so CGI. It looks stupid. It's stupid.
Yeah. No, the scary stuff's frustrating because on paper it's fine. It's just outside of a couple of CG moments like that, it's just that it's lacking the bite, and it doesn't go far enough with being more fun and inventive with what it's doing. It feels like every single encounter with any of the ghostly things or objects or the entities with the objects, every single one just feels like a very quick portion of going through the motions of what this thing is. Instead of
Yeah,
making it feel like every single scene and all these, because you can almost remember how an escape room, like you could split the movie up into like, okay, so you've got the five rooms, so you've got these five chunks essentially that make up the movie.
mm,
I almost felt like no, like get there could be like a 15-20 minute chunk that is just about the ferryman, right, and how they
yeah,
get around him, and then the idea that they have to go through all these obstacles to finally get to the doll so they can put it back in the glass case, like that
yeah,
could be something. But yeah, so it's kind of rough in that place. And that's basically it. They get the doll back in the case. Everything calms down immediately, and they see the parents come home, and we see her birthday party, and kids show up because the bully. We never mentioned this. The bully is actually Daniela's little brother. So she put in
yeah,
a bit of a conversation with him, and he and all the friends show up at the birthday party, so she's not depressed, and
yeah.
whatever.
Maybe I'm just like a little too cynical or something, but like sometimes these movies, like the endings, uh, like sometimes they're just like a little too happy. Like I don't need all like this cheesy family, like like oh, like family is in Christianity are so great and important, and look, we all love each other.
I
That's
I kind of I see. I actually like the heart in Conjuring 2. Here it doesn't quite hit the same chords. No pun
yeah, yeah,
intended. But like because it ends with like the dedication to Lorraine Warren who died this year.
oh
So
yeah,
you see her being happy with her family, and then it goes to the photo and you get the dedication. And the scene where she gives Daniela the message. She's like, "Oh, your father told me this," and gives her some closure. Yeah, it's very saccharine sweet. It's like, it kind of reinforces the idea that nothing bad was ever really going to happen in this movie. Like,
yeah,
everyone's getting a nice happy ending. I suppose you could argue this kind of sets up the idea that Judy, like, they could totally set a movie in present day and have like a 50-year-old Judy like going around.
oh, without a doubt, yeah. I honestly I wouldn't be surprised if that's something they end up doing.
But yeah, that'll be like if the actors want away from the movie after the third Conjuring, maybe that'll be Conjuring 4. Is that we'll jump ahead in the time,
Yeah,
or even maybe not present day. Maybe they want like a 30-something actress, so they cast someone hot. So they'll be like, okay, we'll set it in the
yeah.
early 2000s, I guess.
I mean,
If she's like 12
probably
in the early 70s, then nah, 90s. It'd been 90s.
90s, yeah, midish 90s.
Yeah. Yeah. Imagine doing a horror period piece in the 90s. Is that been done yet? Has anyone made a horror movie set in the 90s? Since the 90s?
If they did, I don't think it's been like overt, like something like Stranger Things, which is really like playing with the decade. Like I don't know, if someone's done a period piece, I don't think it's done it in a way that's like playing with it, which I mean it would be pretty fun. I'd be okay with that.
Yeah, maybe we'll get to that soon. Maybe we'll get to it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean that's basically the movie. I have nothing left to really add to it beyond that.
Yeah. Um. Yeah. I mean, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but it's just it's fine. It's a good watch. But yeah, it doesn't really wow me. Some stuff is interesting. Yeah, I just wish maybe it had a little more bite. Maybe it could have changed some stuff around, but again, though, you mentioned it earlier. Like, there's nothing offensively bad about it. Like I think on a very technical level, it works. There's enjoyment to be had, but yeah, it's just not reaching that next level to really make you say like, oh, hey, this is like, I was really surprised. This is like a thing that's worth.
The same goes for the direction as well. It's just very serviceable. There's not.
Yeah.
I didn't feel any great inspirational, like, oh, that was really well handled, the way they did that jump, or the way they did that tense moment. There was nothing like that for me. It was very by the numbers.
Yeah, it definitely feels like someone that maybe has studied Juan, but maybe doesn't really have like the exact technical expertise as him. Like, he can be a really good Juan mimic, but I wish maybe he would try to find his own thing or something.
So, yeah, that's basically it. That's Annabelle Comes Home. It's perfectly decent. so enthusiastic. Oh my god, I cannot speak. Tim, what are you going to rate the movie out of 10?
This might sound a tad low, but I think it's still a good score. But I think I'm going to give it a 6.5. Because it's definitely above, like, if a 5 is right down the middle, it's definitely above that. But I think once we're getting into 7, 8ish territory, that's like, oh, like I really, really dug. Well, maybe not really dug it, but it's like that's when you start getting like, oh, I liked it a lot. I thought it was pretty good. Oh, I really dug it. I love it. This to me is kind of just below the like, oh, that was pretty good line.
Yeah. I'll probably give it a 6. I think I was tempted not to go with a 6 because I feel like a 6 is still maybe more of a
somewhat decent,
more of a positive number, but I feel like 5.5 feels too harsh. So I'll say 6, and I think a big part of that is the characters actually being pleasant enough to be around, where I kind of cared a little bit about Judy. She seemed likable, and the teenagers did as well to a point. So
yeah, like I could see this being a lot worse if we were just dealing with like assholes or like dumb cliches or just really like poor actors or something. But the characters work, which I guess is saying a lot too. That helps it out.
Yeah, but the exception of maybe Bob and definitely the pizza guy. But small portions of the movie for sure.
Yeah.
So I guess that's that. I guess that's Annabelle Comes Home. You can come home to us on Patreon at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV, where you can support us for as little as $1 per month, and you get bonuses. You get a bonus episode of Streams After Midnight once per month for that $1. And if you go over and become a patron, you will contribute towards the next goal, which is at $250, where we will start doing a monthly live stream called Streams After Midnight. Me and Tim, that is. So look forward to that. Yeah, so go check out Patreon. You can also like, subscribe, rate the podcast on Apple Podcasts or whatever podcast app you use. Helps more people find the show. Share us on the Twitters, your friends. You can tweet at us at Screams Midnight. You can do that on the Twitters. Follow us there. But other than that, I will mention that I'm going to set up an email address soon for people sending in questions to the show. However, Twitter is also a very good place to do that. And sometimes we'll pick some questions and answer them on the show. So the email address isn't set up yet though, but Twitter you can absolutely ask us a question.
It's gonna take a while. Email's hard to set up.
I'm going to do it this week, all right? It's going to happen this week. Tim, don't give me shit.
Well, if you need help, let me know. I'll show you how to do it.
You can check out other content we have from MailFuzz TV, such as the sci-fi movie equivalent to this show, The Atomic Cinema Experiment, aka The Ace. We do sci-fi movies. That's me and Tara who are on that. And then, there's a bunch of TV reviews, a comic book podcast. We got a whole bunch of things going. Go to the Patreon, have a look at the big list in the top post of all the links to all the various audio feeds, all the various shows we do, and have a look. But is that us? I think that is the show, Tim.
That's it.
That's it. Okay, well, Tim's giving me the okay. So in that case, thank you once again for watching and listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching scary movies, guys, and we will see you next time.